of Frankenstein, directed by James Whale. He also directed Universal's The Invisible Man and the first Frankenstein from 1931. So yeah, I've reviewed these films in a bit of a backwards order, you could say. I'm reviewing the sequel to Frankenstein before actually reviewing Frankenstein. Don't ask me why, it's just the order that I'm doing it in. And for some strange reason, this is the order that I've decided to do it in. So I really don't know why. But anyway, The Bride of Frankenstein. I've never seen the film before until a couple of nights ago. I've never even seen the first Frankenstein. Universal's Frankenstein, anyway, from 1931. I've never seen it. I grew up watching Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, the one that was released in the 90s, and that was the one I grew up watching. I never really watched all of the older horrors, and it's only until recently have I started exploring these old gems, because do you know what, I've been really impressed with all of these movies so far within this Universal Monsters box set. Like, I am very familiar with the story of Frankenstein, the first movie, I just never seen that version. So we got The Bride of Frankenstein, and after the events of the first movie, Dr. Henry Frankenstein decides to abandon his plans to create life. But then an old mentor re-enters Dr. Frankenstein's life. He goes by the name of Dr. Pretorius, and he manages to persuade Dr. Frankenstein back into his experiments, and in a way back to playing God. And along with the threats and demands from the monster himself, he ends up creating a mate for the monster, a bride. Now, I always assumed this film would be bad. You know, it would be silly, it would be stupid. I've grown up being aware of this movie and its iconic character, the bride, you know, the image of the bride. I grew up very aware of this film. I just never watched it. I never wanted to invest time with it. And I just assumed, and I think it's because I just assumed it was going to be a bad film and I just wasn't interested. Boy, I wish I had invested time in this a lot earlier. This film really took me off guard. And it took me off guard for a few reasons, the humour being one. I didn't expect it to have the level of humour that this film has. And at first, it was like, oh, I don't know, how is this going to go? But it works, and I'll go into that. But yeah, I was pleasantly surprised with this film. I really, really enjoyed it. And when it does come to the humour, I mean, this film actually generally made me laugh out loud. Like, there were moments in this film which were really, really funny. So, in a way, it's a horror, but I think for me, it came across more of a comedic, tragic fantasy with a lot of heart, more than a horror. I think this film overall was more of a study of how humans sort of react to things that they don't truly understand, and people act out in fear when they don't know, with things they don't know and understand. People tend to react very negatively and aggressively. And I think this film, for me, was more of a study of that human behaviour. This movie has a lot of heart. It was really deep and complex, and I really didn't expect this, for this film, The Bride of Frankenstein, to be so deep and complex. And I liked it. It was a very good blend of comedy, horror, and drama. James Whale did a really good job at combining all of these, and it really does work. At first, I didn't think it was going to, but it did. This was a very, very well-made movie. It was beautiful from all aspects, down to the acting, technically, the cinematography, the lighting. I really, really liked this film. So let's talk about Boris Karloff as Frankenstein's monster. I really liked his performance in this film. I thought he was great. He would do these very subtle expressions of emotions that would make you feel really sympathetic towards the character. How he done it, I mean, he had his really sad eyes as well, and just these little subtle expressions that he would do, whether it be these grunts or certain expressions, and it had a lot of emotion And even though those expressions were subtle, it was bursting with emotion, and it makes you feel really sympathetic towards the character and actually care about the character, and you feel emotionally attached to the character as a result. And this is purely by Boris Karloff's brilliant performance as Frankenstein's monster. He was great. And it was because of just little things in his performance, little things that he would do. And this could have ended up being a very pointless, silly, stupid sequel. But this movie really does explore some deep themes. And for me, while I was watching this film and you follow Dr. Frankenstein's monster, for me it was like he was trying to find a reason to why he exists. You know, in this film, he's very lost, he's very confused and afraid even, and it makes you actually question, who is the monster in this film? Frankenstein's monster? Or are we the monsters? The ones that hunt him and attack him? At the end of the day, it was Dr. Frankenstein that created him, and then he's rejecting him. And, you know, are we the ones that blame you? Are we the actual monsters? Not the creature himself, but us. And I think it asks all those questions, and I do think it explores other themes as well. And, you know, Frankenstein's monster, he can't help what he is. He was created, and he can't help that. He exists now in this world. And you can see he's trying to find, you know, his place in this world, because people, you know, he's not accepted. He's not accepted for what he is. And for me, this movie does sort of explore homosexual themes, you could say. Sort of like what Bryan Singer does with the X-Men movies. I really do think, while I was watching this film, James Whale, who was a homosexual himself, I really think he was exploring these sort of themes, and he was using Frankenstein as a tool, in a way, his character, as a tool to sort of get those messages out there. Because at the end of the day, Frankenstein can't help who he is and what he is, but he's not accepted. I also really liked the actress who played Mary Shelley in a sort of prologue to the movie and The Bride. Her name is Elsa Lanchester, and I really, really loved her performance as the bride. She was amazing. She would do these really sort of quick movements with her head, and it was very bird-like and very quick, and it made you think, what is she going to do next? Because she'd just been born again, you could say, and you know, everything is very new to her, and it's the monster himself, Frankenstein's monster, that she's actually afraid of. And that moment when she's born, when she's created, and she rejects the monster, it's very emotional and very tragic. It's a scene that really does pull on the heartstrings, and she delivers a great performance. She would also do these sort of hissing noises. It was very creepy. The performance was very creepy. She did a really, really good job. And it was also realistic. It felt realistic. It never threw you out of the film. And that goes for the rest of the film, really. I mean, there's such a blend of sort of different genres, I felt, and you've got the humour, and you've got the horror, and you've got the drama, and you've got the deep themes that the film is exploring, and it all works so well together. It's crafted very, very well, and it's a lovely blend, and not once are you actually thrown out of the movie because something is silly or stupid. It just works. Everything works very, very well. And technically, when it comes to the film from a technical point of view, especially for the time, very, very impressive. The effects in this movie, there was one effect which requires these little tiny people, and it requires Dr. Pretorius picking one of the people up and putting him back in the jar. But I was so amazed by how good it looked. It actually made me think, shit, did they sort of go back into this film and sort of remaster it and add some sort of special effect there like George Lucas did with the original trilogy. It actually made me think that, but no, they didn't. I mean, the effects were that good in this film, especially during that scene with the little people. I was really, really impressed. And I also loved the lighting in this film. I thought the shadows in this film were beautiful. I really, really liked the lighting and the cinematography. And the scene when the bride is created with the lighting in that scene and all the shadows, I really, really liked it. And some of the death scenes in this film are quite brutal and look very real as well, which also sort of took me off guard. I didn't expect that. There's one death scene at the beginning of the movie which involves Frankenstein's monster and a man from the village, and he ends up tumbling down this sort of shaft into like a cave, and just you actually see this character landing and hitting the ground, and it looked real and it was quite brutal. I just didn't expect it. And I also really like the music by Franz Waxman. I think he did a really good job of the score in this film, especially during the birth of the bride. I loved it. It really helped add tension to the scene, and the tension within that scene where you've got Dr. Frankenstein and Dr. Pretorius creating the bride, and they're about to create a new life again. The tension is incredible, and again, it's all down to the very, very good direction by James Whale. The scene was beautifully shot, the cinematography, the lighting, the performances, the direction, and even the music. It all helps add tension to this scene, and it was incredible. And you've got this beating noise. It's like a boom, 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 and it's the bride's heart, and it's playing for the duration of the scene as well, which also helps add tension to the scene, because in a way, for me, it reminded me of the theme tune for Jaws, the dun 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 dun, and the shark is coming. Well, within this scene you've got that boom, boom, the bride is coming, and I really like that. And it's that beating of the heart with the great soundtrack and the great direction and the camera angles and the performances that really do help create an incredibly tense scene. And when that bride is finally born, it's beautiful. I was actually glued to the screen. I was immersed into this film, and it was an experience, and I didn't expect to have an experience like I had. It was an enjoyable experience, but also an emotional experience. I really didn't think this movie was going to be as emotional as it was, but it really did pull on the heartstrings. And it also has a very, very smart script as well. I was really impressed by the writing in this film, and I think they had a few problems with the script actually. It took a few rewrites until James Whale, the director, was happy, I believe. And there's also some really powerful moments, powerful scenes and shots within this film. There's this one scene of Frankenstein being tied up to a pole, and to me it came across like a representation of Jesus Christ on the cross. And that was a very, very powerful moment and scene. And it took me off guard. I was like, whoa, that's deep. And so that for me was very deep and very powerful. And I really, really liked that. There's also a very, very nice scene which is actually in the film Mary Shelley's Frankenstein as well. There's a scene where Frankenstein's monster stumbles upon the hermit in some sort of log cabin in the woods, and you've got this sort of moment in the film where he befriends this blind man, and yeah, it's got a bit of humour in it, but the scene was filled with so much emotion. There's a moment towards the end of the scene where the blind man is putting Frankenstein's monster to bed, and I really felt it pulling at the heartstrings, and I just didn't expect it. It was a powerful moment again, and it was unexpected, and you sort of forget about all of the other stuff, like the funny moments and the comedic moments, and all of a sudden it becomes a very deep, heartfelt story, and you find yourself really caring for this character, the monster, a monster that you really should be afraid of. But I found myself really feeling sympathetic and emotionally attached towards the character instead. And it's also the performances. It's through the performances in this scene that really help make it emotional. The scene with the hermit is actually a good example of what I was saying about this film being a perfect blend of humour, horror, drama, and emotion and all of that. It's a perfect blend. And in this scene, it's got a few comedic moments. Yeah, he's got Frankenstein's monster and he's teaching him to smoke and he's giving him a drink, and then it's ending in tears, and it is really emotional. So like one moment you're laughing and the next moment you're crying, and it works very, very well. The way they crafted the scene when it comes to the writing, the performances, it works very, very well. And there's a lot of moments like that during this film where it's a mix of emotions. This entire film was a mix of emotions, and I really, really liked it. I was so impressed with this film, and I just didn't expect to be. It was a surprise. It was a pleasant surprise. And yeah, it's silly and it's camp, but it's also very aware of itself as well. And it's emotional. It's a mix of everything. And it's got deep messages. It's got a lot of heart. Technically, it's a very good film. Even now, I think it stands the test of time. The effects in the movie are quite good. Lovely cinematography, beautiful lighting, very well directed by James Whale. Great soundtrack, great performances. I also really liked the humour in this film as well. There were moments which made me, really laugh out loud. And I didn't expect to be doing that in this film, but it had so much. It was sort of like a dry sense of humour. Like there were moments where it was silly, and you'd have some characters just screaming and then running away. But then there were other moments then, and it was sort of like a dry sense of humour, and it was just, I liked how they did it. And again, it was a perfect blend. I mean, it worked really well with this story and with the characters. I would never have thought comedy and Frankenstein would have gone so well. This was a very, very good film, and if you're like me, or you were like me last week and you hadn't seen The Bride of Frankenstein yet, I highly recommend you do, because it's an experience, and there's a lot more to it. It's one of those films, I think, where it can be as deep as you want it to be or as shallow as you want it to be. But this is, for me, it was a very complex movie, a deep movie, and it pulls on the heartstrings, and it really makes you think, and I just didn't expect that. So yeah, they are my thoughts and opinions of The Bride of Frankenstein, and I will be giving it an A+. So have you guys seen The Bride of Frankenstein? Let me know below. What do you guys think of it? Was there anything you agreed or disagreed with what I said about the movie? Let me know below. My next review in my Halloween specials from the Universal Monsters box set is Frankenstein, the first film. So yeah, a little bit of a backwards order. I do apologise, but it's just the way I'm going about them. I just don't know why. But yeah, I am enjoying them all. I'm really enjoying them, and I didn't expect to like these films as much as I have. So yeah, what do you guys think of the film? Let me know below. And if you're like me and you share the same passion, then why not hit subscribe?